Missing someone. Love with all your heart. Missing someone. Love with heart.
Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So this week I have a returning client. So she's been blonde for a while. I'm gonna say maybe like a couple years. And today she came in and she wanted to go darker. But instead of just putting like a gloss all over this to kind of make it all one color, she wanted to have some pops of dimension, and so she wanted to see like some pieces that were lighter and some pieces that were darker mixed in. So I opted to do more of a low light placement for her goal. So in our consultation, we did talk about what type of low light placement she wanted. She did want to see her ends look gradually lighter as far as a little bit solid towards the ends, but she didn't want it to look as solid as they are right now. So for this placement, everything below the crown, I am going to do my lowlights and place them all the way through the ends. That means I'm painting the whole strand that is in the foil. So around the hairline and the nape of the neck, I did more of like a medium sized weave, and then I am now taking a center section of a slice and painting that all the way through to the ends. And when I'm doing this, I feel like lowlights, when you're doing placement for this, it's very visual. And so I'm kind of thinking of what the backwards version would be if I were doing her highlight placement. So since I normally start in the nape of the neck, I usually weave that part. I'm going to weave that part with her lowlight as well. And then in the back here where we're doing the center section, I'm still slicing, and because these are more lowlights, I want to spread them out a little bit further apart than I would on typical highlight. So for my formulation, for my lowlights, I normally like to mix my lowlight at least a level darker than what their goal is, because whenever I lowlight the hair, I never use permanent color. I will 99% of the time use like a demi-permanent, just because I like it to fade, and I just personally don't like using permanent color on anybody if they're not if it's not meant for like covering gray. I'll always try to get away with using a demi-permanent if possible, because I just feel like if you were to change up your hair, it's just a lot easier to lift it out and just switch it up in the future if you do a demi-permanent. So I am doing a liquid demi-permanent, and I used a level 5 brown and mix that equal parts to a level 3 natural. And so mixing a level 5 and then mixing a level 3 is going to create a level 4 essentially. And I use the natural and the brown because I feel like it's going to give a nice neutral blend and kind of deposit back those warm tones in her hair. That's where the brown comes in. I feel like this level brown with the natural level 3 is going to create the perfect low light color for her. So essentially, since I'm creating a level 4, I would suspect that as she washes her hair out, the most that this is going to lighten to might be like a level 6. I always find that whenever you're coloring or toning the hair with a demi-permanent, it can lighten up to like around 2 levels, and then anything beyond that, it kind of just stays there and then stops fading. So right now I'm still kind of taking her lowlights and painting them all the way towards the end of her hair, but right in the crown area where she parts her hair, I'm going to start alternating my lowlight placement. So I will alternate with a lowlight that reaches all the way to the ends of the hair, and then alternate it with a lowlight that is feathered to the mid area of where her hair is. And this part where the placement where you're kind of feathering down, this part is completely visual. I kind of base it off of where it ends, and so for her I start feathering right above like her shoulder area, and so I take a mental note of that, and every time I do a piece where I'm feathering to the mids, I try to visualize where it's going to lay and try not to feather below that area where her shoulder, right above her shoulders, because I want those feathered down pieces to be all cohesive. So the reason why I am alternating my low light placement on the top crown area is because that's where she parts her hair. And in our consultation, she wanted to kind of maintain that look where her ends are a little bit solid, but she didn't want it to be as solid as they are now. So that's why I'm going in and alternating to kind of preserve some of the ends to make it look like the roots are darker, and then the blend kind of gradually gets a little bit lighter and a little bit more solid towards the ends. And this is just a great way to create really pretty dimension and just really customize a low light placement for your client. I feel like when this fades out, she'll definitely be able to see that it gradually gets a little bit lighter from the highlights that are still going to be there compared to the low lights. And then I forgot to mention, so I am using a liquid demi formula. Again, I'm using a level 5-8, which is a level 5 brown, and then mix that with a level 3-0, which is a level 3 natural, to essentially create a level 4. And I mix those two 1-to-1 to create that level 4, and then I mix the color gloss formula 1-to-1 with a 6-volume developer. Another reason why I also like using a demi-permanent color line for lowlights is because the demi-permanents, they do not lift the hair. So like I said, I was using a 6-volume with my formulation, and I really don't even have to worry about it budging or affecting any of the virgin hair in between her highlights. I personally don't love a base bump or anything that kind of shifts the virgin hair in between, especially on clients who are like a level 5 and below, because I just feel like down the line, if you were to base bump or have something that would shift their natural hair color, it might look good fresh, but I feel like over time it just kind of looks really warm and in the light a little bit brassy to some clients, and especially for clients who are trying to fight off the warmth and don't really love it against their skin tone. I find that I try to stay away from any type of product that will shift their base like that, or make anything to where their virgin hair is a little bit warmer or anything like that, because I just personally don't think it's necessary, because it's such a subtle thing to do base bumps, but I feel like it looks pretty at first, but over time it just could look a little bit too warm for the client. But again, I'm not totally against it. I just think for certain clients who are more comfortable being on the ashy side, it's just not super ideal to use products that bump the base and then essentially kind of make that base a little bit warmer. So going back to the placement, I'm trying to keep my foils not too close together, because I don't want to overwhelm the look with too many lowlights. So I feel like since we're doing such a dark lowlight, like I'm using a level 4 for her lowlight, knowing that it could possibly fade into a level 5 or even a level 6 over time as she washes it. So I'm spacing it out, and I feel like I usually will leave about maybe like a ½ inch in between. I don't like to place the lowlights too close together because then I feel like it loses a lot of the lightness and the highlights around it. So compared to like doing a highlight, I definitely space my foils out a little bit more. And then here I am just very slightly and strategically trying to weave the area to kind of break up the dimension here and give her some more subtle pieces around the hairline compared to that really bold money piece that we used to do. And I know I've been saying in my video a lot that the low light will fade, and the reason why it fades is because her hair is already pre-lightened with highlights, and so whenever you put any type of color on hair that's already been highlighted, the color will always fade. And so in my experience, I find that when it's on hair that is like a level 8 or 9 and above, like levels 8 through 10, I would say, I find that the toner can fade a little bit quicker, especially if it's your first time going dark from having so many highlights like this. It typically fades the fastest the first round of you going darker. But let's say down the line she comes back in a few months to retouch up her lighter gloss that we're going to be putting on later, and we retone everything. So as you layer the toners on top of each other under pre-existing highlights like these, the toner does last longer. But whenever you're going from such a blonde tone like this to a darker tone, I find that that first round you'll always fade faster opposed to if you were to come back in for the second round. And I just feel like it's because it just has like one layer of gloss over it. You could definitely maybe prevent it from fading so fast if you were to do multiple glosses or if you were to fill, but in this case I'm not filling her hair. I am just putting the gloss right on top of her hair and just formulating a little bit darker so it does last her a little bit longer. And then next time when she comes in, we will maybe switch up her formula depending on how faded this gloss is when she comes in next time. So very similar to my highlight placement, I did a weave around the hairline on the side and then also a weave right above the ear. And so now I am continuing my slicing low lights on the side here. And you can see I took a pretty thick section above from that last foil because again, since we're doing low lights, I do want to space these out a little bit more further apart than I would a typical highlight. Another thing that I do mention when I explain to clients who have highlights and they want to go darker is that it does fade quite fast. So I'll even ask them if like they want to leave like the goal photo today and if they're okay with it fading out lighter, potentially 2 levels lighter, or I give them the option that we could tone it a little bit darker today and then have the hair fade into their inspo picture. So I kind of give them the 2 options and then we kind of feel it out and see which one they would prefer. Now, if this was a client who was unsure of going darker, I would definitely just stick with the lightest toner that they would want to get for the time being, just in case they do change their mind and do want to go lighter. So for some clients, I'll definitely try to explain to them that if they start the journey of going darker, it is also a long process if they ever want to go back to a level 9 or a level 10, because now that you've put the darker toner on their pre-existing highlights, it doesn't technically make their hair any healthier. You still have the highlights underneath it, you're just kind of masking it now with a darker color. And so going back in with more highlights on top of your already highlighted hair that you've darkened now, you have to be really careful, and sometimes it just doesn't get as light. So I always do a warning to my clients and let them know that there is a possibility that if they do go darker, they might have to grow out their old highlights before we could re-highlight them. And honestly, your hair only grows so much every year, and so I'll visually show them how much how long it'll take for their hair to grow out if they want to keep the length and then want to do highlights again. So now that I've done doing her lowlights, I'm going in and applying her toner on her highlights now. So for her lighter formulation, I am going in with a level 6 gold, and then I added in a little bit of a level 3 natural. And so the level 6 gold is going to kind of help fill the hair a little bit, and essentially we're kind of creating like a darker level 5 with this formulation. And I like to just apply it straight on to the hair as the lowlights are processing, because I feel like it just saves time. And then once everything is pretty much done, like the lowlights are done processing, then I'll do an extra layer of this lighter formulation all over one more time for a few seconds, and then shampoo and condition everything out. Alrighty guys, so here is the finished look. It looked so beautiful and healthy. You can definitely see the dimension, and although it looks very subtle and dark, this is going to lighten up a little bit as she washes it out. And then in a few months, once the toner or the gloss washes out, we're going to be blending her roots to kind of soften the grow out a little bit, and then retone everything back down to this more subtle, rich brown. Alrighty guys, that is it for this week's episode. Thank you guys so much for watching and tuning in, and as always, I will talk to you guys next week.